Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY video here about good old Athena. If you're new to my channel, this lovely looking boat here behind me is Athena. She's a 1987 Warrior 38 that I'm in the middle of refitting. The end goal being for my girlfriend Eva and I to be able to move aboard in roughly a year and a half. As you can see, Athena is currently missing her rudder. I removed it last winter and learned an important lesson. Frozen dirt sucks for digging holes. I removed the rudder because there was rust oozing out the bottom of it. Now that can be anything from not a big deal to a catastrophe waiting to happen, and I tend to err on the side of caution. Long story short, this video is going to be the first in a series covering the construction of Athena's new rudder. In this video I'm going to make a mold from the old rudder that I can hopefully use to construct the new rudder. Welcome to the workshop. I've already put in a few hours of glorious sanding preparing the old rudder, and that went a little something like this. After all of that wonderful sanding, I applied fairing compound to the obvious low spots on the rudder, but just running my hand over this, I can feel a lot of smaller low spots. Using my big fairing board from Flexi Sander, I can see that there are definitely some low spots. That leaves me with a decision to make. From a performance standpoint, those small low spots, they don't really matter. The rudder will get me where I'm going for sure, no matter what. But I am going through all of the time and the expense of building what will hopefully be a relatively high quality mold. So it makes sense to just put in a little bit of extra effort and fair the surface of the rudder. Athena is a Warrior 38. There's also the Warrior 40, and I believe those two types have the same rudder. And all of those boats are probably gonna need a new rudder sometime in the not too distant future. And how cool would it be to be able to help out the community with a decent quality mold for making new rudders? Sadly, before I get to the fun part of fairing, there is still the small matter of sanding a lot of nooks and crannies. I don't know how well the camera is gonna pick it up, but there is a definite low spot here. And there's also some funkiness going on in here where the rudder attaches to the skag. So let's deal with that. Even with all of my fancy power sanders, I have yet to find something that can get into an area like this. So far, my best bet is a stir stick and some sandpaper. This is looking a whole lot better now. There are still some low spots here, but those are going to require some fairing compound. As most often for a general fairing, I'm going to be using West Systems 105, their fast hardener in this case, and some 407. To make sure that the fairing compound is thoroughly mixed and also to get any little air bubbles out of there, I use one of these cheap IKEA cutting boards. These are pretty flexible, and as soon as the fairing compound has cured, you can simply just kind of peel it off. There we go, good as new. Easy peasy. That is the first layer of fairing compound on there. I'll let that cure overnight. Tomorrow I can come back, sand that, flip the rudder around, and repeat the process on the other side. Look who showed up. Your cool good buddy, Skipper. A couple of weeks ago, I made a small experiment to see if I could use slightly thickened epoxy in lieu of gel coat for the mold. Here is the mold of that gas cap, and as you can see, it's pretty good. There are some little bubbles here and there, but other than that, it's pretty good. Although this is a very encouraging result, I've been warned that for something the size of the rudder, using slightly thickened epoxy might not be the best way to go. So I've purchased some more proper mold making materials. These two boxes should be those materials, and this is not West System products. I figured this would be a great opportunity to try something new, but I'm gonna hold off until tomorrow to open these, so yeah, we'll have to wait until then. Hi guys, it is a few days later. Before we do anything else, let me just reassure you, Jökull is perfectly okay after his little tumble down the stairs in the last shot. Sometimes he's a little bit clumsy and stuff like that happens, but like I said, he's okay. It's been a busy couple of days here in the workshop. As you can see, we've now got some awesome shelves over here, and the rudder is looking a lot better. I've been hard at work fairing and also sanding. Let's not forget about the oh glorious sanding. Like I mentioned earlier, fairing the rudder is not really necessary, but I don't mind putting in a little bit of extra effort, especially not in the case where someone else with a Warrior 38 or 40 might need a new rudder. Late last night, I touched up some areas where there were some little imperfections, so let me just go ahead and get those knocked down. And just like that, I think I'm done sanding. There are no more low spots and no more jagged edges. As you can see, I've placed my silicone heating mat underneath the rudder, and we'll get back to why a little later in the video. Like any cooking show worth its salt, I've cheated a little bit and gotten started off camera. This is, of course, the parting board. To be more accurate, this is a part of the parting board. As you can see, I still need to do this area over here. The mold is going to consist of two parts, an upper part and a lower part. And the parting board is what I'm going to use to lay up the flange on that upper part. To get a parting board that resembles the shape of the hull, I'm going to use an angle and a pencil. The line on the masking tape should now be a pretty close match to the shape of the hull. Now, if there are some gaps, that's not a big deal. Like a glove. Wow, with a few minor gaps. We'll deal with the gaps like this one right here tomorrow. Now there's just a small matter of joining this new piece to the piece I made yesterday. The only place where that is really challenging is around the shaft, because you don't want the parting board to move around on you. But Cement Boat Guy gave me a great idea for how to solve this. The hole in this was cut with a hole saw that matches the diameter on the shaft, and this has been cut down so that when the parting board sits on top, it should be roughly halfway up on the shaft. I've made two of these little doodads, one up here and one down here where the rudder attaches to the skeg. Thanks to my little doodads here, lining up the parting board should be very easy. I've cut a bunch of small spacers to support the parting board, and yeah, that feels pretty solid. No doubt the astute will have noted that I still need to fill this gap, but this is such a tight little awkward space that I can't really get in there, so I decided to make a little cardboard template. This got turned into this, which is a nice snug fit. Because I don't really have any support on this end, I decided just to give this a little dab of thickened epoxy, and that should be very strong. It's getting pretty late, but at least the parting board is done. Now, I've never made a mold before, but I think that looks pretty promising, so we'll see tomorrow. But before I call it quits for today, let's just take a real quick look at the products I'll be using tomorrow. Here we've got three different weights of fiberglass. We've got 163 grams, 390 and 580 grams. This one is definitely going to be the most exciting of the two packages. we've got wax, we've got resin, we've got hardener, and another hardener. We've got PVA, we've got mold resin, and another mold resin. We've got cotton flux. We've got a foam brush for the PVA and 3 extra heads for that brush, a big lump of wax, some demolding wedges, and some alignment pins. We'll also need some of these. These are 3mm chopped fiberglass strands, but I already had these lying around, so I didn't need to order those. To say that I'm excited about tomorrow would almost be an understatement. I'm gonna have a very hard time falling asleep tonight, but I better call it quits for today and take Jökull for a long walk. Good morning, guys. It is the next day. I've been here at the workshop puttering around a little bit this morning, and I just popped out to pick up a spray gun. Everything that I've read online says that applying PVA is a lot easier with a spray gun rather than a brush. But it wasn't actually until this morning I realized that, wait a minute, we've got a compressor here at the workshop. This weekend is going to be a lot of firsts for me. It's going to be my first ever mold, and it's also going to be my first ever time using a spray gun. Very exciting. It's not terribly warm here at the workshop. We keep the temperature low to keep the cost down. The very first thing I did this morning when I got here was to tuck in the rudder. It's underneath a duvet and some insulating mats. I'm using the silicone mat I placed underneath the rudder yesterday to just boost the temperature a little bit. I believe the temperature range for the PVA is between 15 and 30 degrees Celsius, ideally around 20. Now this resin and hardener will cure down to 8, so if it can land somewhere around 20, that would be perfect. Let's see how we're doing. It looks like we're around 18 degrees Celsius. Like I've said, this is my first ever time building a mold. I'm following this guide from RNG, which is the place where I purchased all of the supplies. I'll link in this down below. It's a huge PDF, and if you want to get to the mold making part of it, you gotta flip to page 86. The mold making section is 16 pages long, and it's both in German and in English. I've already completed all of these steps. I think the next thing is to fill in the gap between the rudder and the parting board. And that is what this big blob of wax is for. Wow, the feel of this brings me right back to kindergarten. Messing around with this wax stuff sure is time consuming. I am almost done. I only need to do this section here, but I'm about an hour in. The long straight sections like this one aren't that bad, but the tiny area over here where the rudder attaches to the skag, well, that took just about forever. I think I'm finally done messing around with that blue Play-Doh stuff. As you can see, all of the gaps are filled in, and also the holes for the countersunk screws I put in yesterday. Having never made a mold before, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I think it looks reasonably good. For the way I'm planning to use this mold, I won't really need the alignment pins and the fixer mold doohickeys. I chose to put them in anyways, just to get a bit of practice. They each consist of 3 parts. A bottom part and a top part, and then either a threaded doohickey or just a piece of rod. The fixer mold doohickeys are used for tightening 2 parts of a mold together, while the alignment pins are just used for, well, aligning 2 parts of a mold. Anywho, for now, I actually just need to remove all of these again, because the next step is to wax the rudder. Before applying PVA to a non-sealed surface, like for instance the raw fiberglass I've got up there or the fairing compound, it is recommended to apply a few coats of this wax first. I've already wiped down the rudder to make sure it's absolutely clean. Here I've got 2 rags, one for applying the wax and one for buffing. So now it's just a matter of the good old wax on, wax off. Although it is not really needed, I'm also gonna wax the parting board, because why not? Before I started applying wax, I checked the temperature of the rudder, and it's absolutely perfect. We're sitting at just around 21 degrees Celsius. Time for a second coat. While I'm waiting for that second coat of wax to dry enough that I can buff it, let's go ahead and take a look at what PVA does. Well, the film thickness is a little thin, but as you can see, there is a sort of plasticky film all over this piece of aluminum. This is what dried PVA looks like, and this is what's hopefully going to keep the rudder from sticking to the mold. It's a few hours later and I've got 4 coats of wax on here. That has to be enough. For me, the most terrifying part about this entire project is spraying the PVA. For one, I'm new to using a spray gun, and also if I mess up the PVA, well then there's a chance I won't be able to separate the mold and the rudder. I've reread the instructions for the PVA for the umpteenth time, and it says to apply a mist coat, let that cure, and then apply 1 or 2 flow coats. So yeah, let's see how this goes. To my completely amateur, untrained eye, that looks pretty good. I sprayed this little piece of scrap here so that I can check to see if the PVA is dry without touching the mold. It looks like I can go ahead and boost the heat a little bit. It's been exactly 31 minutes since I sprayed that first coat, and the entire surface has kind of dulled over. I'm guessing that means it's dry. Looking at my little sample here, as you can see, I touched it while it was still wet, but if I touch it now, no marks. Now it's just a matter of waiting for that second coat to dry. This is literally like watching paint dry. It's getting pretty late, and I think tonight is going to be a very long night. I finished applying the last coat of PVA, so I'm just waiting for that to dry. And because I'm not going to be spraying anymore, I can get some company. And what's more important, my company can get a treat. It's about an hour later and that last coat of PVA is finally dry, so I can go ahead and fit the fix-a-mold doodads and the alignment pins. Now when the two halves of the mold separate, these should be nice and flush. Let's go ahead and get some mold resin mixed up. This is the P hardener. It's got a mixture ratio of 100 to 22 with this resin. So let's go ahead and get some mixed up. Let's just see how far 200 grams gets us. 200 grams, that means 44 grams of hardener. This stuff feels pretty thick. The manual specifically says to apply this in one direction to avoid air bubbles, so let's give that a go. It looks like I've got the entire rudder covered, and I better move quick because the next step has to happen while this is still wet. Remember the chopped fiberglass strands? Well, the first thing we need them for is to just make it snow. Well, this is certainly fun and festive. The not so fun and festive thing is the fact that now this just needs to sit for 2 hours. Fast forward about an hour and a half and this looks almost right. With the excess chopped fiberglass strands vacuumed off of the rudder, the next step is to apply what the instructions refer to as the coupling layer. Apparently that layer should consist of equal parts chopped glass fiber and cotton flux mixed into the resin. The purpose of the coupling layer is to prevent voids from forming between the mold resin and the laminate, and also to help round over or fillet any sharp angles. For instance, down here in this corner, without a fillet here, you run the risk of getting voids, and voids are no good. We're going to switch to a different resin. This is the L resin and the L hardener. The mix ratio here is 1:4. I've never used these cotton flux thingies before, so that should be interesting. From the pictures in the manual, it looks like I'm supposed to spread this out all over the place, not just on the radiuses. I can honestly say that's the least amount of fun I've had in a very long time. Jesus, but at least the coupling layer is done. Let's get some glass on this. The first layer is going to be this stuff. Now, I really wish I had used a template and pre-cut all of these pieces, but I didn't do that, so this is going to be a little bit fiddly. There is no doubt about it. It is going to be a long day. It's 1 a.m. I've got that initial layer on there, plus a layer of the 390 gram. I think maybe for the next layer, I'm going to go for broke and give the 580 gram a try, but I don't think that's going to have an easy time conforming to those radiuses, so we'll see how that goes. But I'll go ahead and get this wetted out. A little earlier today, I thought to myself, hey, Mas, maybe I should hold off until tomorrow before I start laying up glass, but I didn't listen to myself, and here we are, 1 a.m., and I still have at least another couple of hours to go. I finished wetting out that layer of glass, but looking at this 580 gram, there is no way I can get this to conform to those curves, so I'm going to leave this here and get another layer of 390 on there. I think the instructions mention 2 layers of the 580 grams, so yeah, if I'm to achieve that same weight using 390, that's going to take a while, but also I think I don't have enough glass to do that, so we'll see. I'm starting to fall asleep standing up. This is not great, but the good news is I only have 1 more layer to do and then I'm done, which is good because it's almost 3 a.m. This brings back lots of great memories from such previous hits as the deck rebuild. Thomas and I had a lot of long nights. But yeah, laying up laminate by hand is slow. And that is it. I am done. Now I've chosen to diverge from the otherwise excellent manual on how to finish the outside of the mold. As you can see, I've got peel ply on here now, and the manual wants you to finish with the same mold resin that's on the inside. Now the reason I put peel ply on is because I'm not sure the mold is actually strong enough. I think I might have to add some strips of foam and glass those to it to stiffen it up a little bit, but we'll see. I hope this is going to be a good mold because I've got a lot of hours into this thing by now. Unfortunately, the side of the mold I laid up now has to sit there for 24 hours curing, and that means I can't flip the rudder around and show you guys the other side, let alone get started laying up the other side of the mold. So yeah, that will have to wait until next weekend. If there ever was a cliffhanger, right? But yeah, as I'm sure you can see, I am pretty tired. I've put in a good 18 or 19 hours today, so I want to get back to Obelix and take a tiny little nap. But I hope to see you guys back here in the workshop next weekend, where we are hopefully going to finish the mold and open it up to see if we can actually get the rudder out of there. Fingers crossed. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!